This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
What?
He's a natural.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, we're on?
Yeah.
Okay, Marv Rabbi, thank you very much for this great opportunity to come to not only Los Angeles, but the Heilige Stadt of Pico. How do you say it? Robertson? And I want to thank my good Yedid, Rabbi Yaakov Tubi, who made this all happen. So we thank Rabbi Yaakov for opening up his home. May this home always be a makom of Kedusha, makom of Torah, makom of Chesed. May the Shefa of HaKadosh Baruch Hu pour onto this mishpacha for simchas, for nachas, b'suras tovos, arbiyas gel tzedek. So before we speak about the topic this evening, tonight of course is Yud Gimel Elul, which is the Yom of the Hilula of the great tzaddik, the Reach Tov. Who's the Reach Tov? Chacham Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim Tov of Baghdad. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Tov of Baghdad, who was one of the all-time great giants who occupied no rabbinic position. He lived from 1835 to 1909. He was almost a supernatural personality. When he would give a drasha on Shabbat, he would speak for hours and hours on end. Hundreds, if not thousands of people came to hear him. When he spoke, it was Shechina Medaberes Mitoch Grono Shel Chacham Yosef Chaim. And I want to share with you a very amazing story that he brings in Parshas Lech Lecha. He writes in the Sefer Od Yosef Chai in Parshas Lech Lecha something just out of this world, that there was once a Mekubal, and the Mekubal would study morning, afternoon, night in his home. He would write Sefarim, and he was comfortable, he had resources, everything was perfect. Vayehi Hayom, a certain day came, and this Mekubal, all of a sudden, the government knocked on the door, and they grabbed him and they put him in prison, and he's in a prison cell, nothing to eat practically, nothing to drink practically, he's away from his family, and he doesn't know why did God do this to him, he didn't even commit any crime. And one thing he realizes is, even though he's in terrible tsar, and he's really distressed, and he's extremely uncomfortable, and he's b'tsar haguf, nevertheless, he is overcome with tremendous menuchat hanefesh, great peace of mind. And he's able to write Sodot of Kabbalah there for 30 days. He even composed an entire sefer. And then on the 31st day, he gets word that he was acquitted and he's let out of jail. But he could not understand, Ma asa Elokim loi, why did God do this to him? And it was bothering him. Why would God make this happen? Yes, of course, he was able to accomplish in his limud in this prison cell. But he experienced tremendous tsar haguf, so why did God arrange this? And he sort of fell asleep thinking about this. And he had a dream. And in this dream, an old sage appeared to him. And he said, Rabbi, why does this happen to you? Look behind me. And he sort of peels away the veil, and behind him were sets of beautiful children. 3 sets. One set of many, many beautiful children. Another set of many, many beautiful children. And a third set of beautiful children. So the Ben Ish Chai said, Mazeh. He said, these are your children. He said, what do you mean these are my children? These are nitzotzot that are connected to your neshama, that you needed to go to that prison cell to be masake in those sparks of kedusha that were nizgalgel as domim. We know that somebody could come back in this world as a chai, as a living being, as a tzomeach, as a plant, or as a rock. Just my personal advice is avoid coming back as a rock. It's not really that great of an existence, but you could come back as a rock. These nitzotzot of kedusha are from your soul. They were nizgalgel in the stones of the prison cell, and they really needed tikkun badly, so God orchestrated that you should come to this place and have tremendous menuchas hanefesh and learn Kabbalah here and write a sefer here to masake in these nitzotzot. This is the story that Chacham Rabbi Yosef Chaim brings down in Parshas Lech Lecha, and he says that this is very important for a Jew to know. Sometimes you come to a certain place, why did I come here? Why did I come to Pico Robertson? Today, I'll tell you a story. Don't tell anybody, it's just between me, you, and whoever is watching on that camera. I don't know why I did this, but they took me on a boat today. on the Pacific Ocean. I live in New York, so we only know about the Atlantic Ocean, but the Pacific Ocean, it's different. It's different. In the Pacific Ocean, you have pelicans. Okay, that's interesting, since the pelicans. We were on the boat, a dolphin jumped out of the water, and we went because I wanted to see a whale. Because we're going to read after Yonah, and even though Yonah wasn't swallowed by a whale, he was swallowed by a dog, we're going to see a. And all of a sudden, Vayeman Hashem Ruach Gedolah, a big wind came, and it blew off my glasses. I cannot see a thing right now. I don't know who's sitting in front of me. You could be my Kehila back from New York, for all I know. I don't know. And anyway, why did I need to go to the Pacific Ocean? I have to fly to the other side of the United States of America to go to the Pacific Ocean. You don't know why the Rivan Sham Me Hashem Mitzadei Gaver. Sometimes you have to go to certain places. You have to go to this office. You have to go to that street. There's a detour. Wherever you need to be, it's because you need to be there. You have a tikkun to do there. And when you serve Hashem, when you learn Torah, wherever you are, you're masaking that area. And this, okay, fine. The Talmidim of the Ben Ish Chai write that when the Ben Ish Chai tells a story about a Mekubal, this is not a story about a Mekubal. This is a story about him. This happened to the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was incarcerated for 30 days. Why was he put in jail? Ben Ish Chai had 4 brothers. Ben Ish Chai was the oldest. He had a brother, Yechezkel. He had a brother, Sason. He had a brother, Nisim. And he had a 4th brother. And they were very eminent and prominent businessmen. And they sold all kinds of merchandise. And the deal was, they support their older brother, and he would be comfortable. And the Ben Ish Chai was supported by his brothers his entire life. He was a very wealthy man. You know what position he held? He held no position. You know why the Ben Ish Chai was influential? Because he had no board. He was not dependent on Kehillah. You cannot have Rabbanim dependent on the Kehillah. If Rabbanim are dependent on Kehillah, the Rabbanim only say what the Kehillah wants to hear, not what God wants them to say. But that's a discussion for a different time. That's why the Ben Ish Chai was so powerful, because he was independent. He was not dependent on the people. However, in order to honor their older brother, they wanted to give him name recognition, so they made a seal, and the seal was, on every business deal, they signed the name of the Ben Ish Chai, Chacham Yosef Chaim. And the brothers came into tremendous debt. And the creditors said, pay us up. The brothers said, okay, we'll pay up, we'll sell the real estate. So they said, yeah, sell it now. The brother said, if we sell it now, we're going to get a bad price. They said, I don't care, sell it now. The government got involved. The government incarcerated all 4 brothers of Ben Ish Chai. And then the government looked at all the documents, and they said on every single document is a signature of the Ben Ish Chai. So the Indian from India, they came and they took the Ben Ish Chai out of Baghdad and they brought him to India and they put him in prison in India for 30 days. What's amazing is that when the Ben Ish Chai came out of prison, he did not leave his house, eat, drink, sleep, talk for 7 years. He did not say one shiur, and he made no appearances. And nobody knows why. The explanation given by his Talmidim is that Ben Ish Chai writes about something called Tikkun HaKaneh, the rectification of the Sefer HaKaneh. That if somebody is able to completely destroy the Yetzer Hara in some kind of 6-year program of eating nothing min hachai, only eating balayla, and not talking to anybody, and the Ben Ish Chai did some kind of mysterious tikkun, until the day of the Petira of his Rabbi, Rav Abdullah Sameach. Yeah, and he gave hesped for Rav Sameach, and then he was back to business as usual. When the Ben Ish Chai passed away in 1909, one of the Maspidim was Reb Shimon Agassi. Yeah, Shimon Agassi was the Rebbe of Rabbi Yehuda Fataya. You ever hear of Rabbi Yehuda Fataya? He was a great rabbi in Kabbalah Ma'asit. He's buried on Har HaZeisim. And Reb Shimon Agassi says that anyone who came to the Levaya of Ben Ish Chai Mizuman l'chayei olam haba, automatically goes to the Garden of Eden. Why? Because the Gemara says that about Rabbi. And therefore it applies to Ben Ish Chai also. You say, what's the connection between Rabbi and the Ben Ish Chai? Furthermore, even if you could... Now, the Ben Ish Chai passed away b'chatzot halayla. And people thought the Levi would be in the morning, but they buried him in the middle of the night, which probably explains some of the mystery as to where exactly he's buried. You know, Ben Ish Chai has two kevarim. He has a kever in Baghdad, and he has a kever on Har HaZeisim. The Mekubalim say that he was carried by spiritual forces out of Baghdad and buried in Har HaZeitim. I was at his kever, where? Not in Baghdad, on Har HaZeisim, a few times. It's an amazing thing. Rabbi Yitzchak Kaduri and Mordechai Eliyahu says he in fact is buried on Har HaZeisim. I believe Rabbi Yaakov Hillel said, how in the world is he buried on Har HaZeisim? But in any event, the Reb Shimon Agassi says, you know why I say that anyone who is at the Ben Ish Chai's kever is mezuman l'chai olam haba? Because I looked at the Ben Ish Chai and I recognized that his shoresh haneshama is from Yosef HaTzaddik. Midas Yisod. And Rebbe came from Yosef HaTzaddik, meaning mystically, his soul was from the root of Yosef HaTzaddik. And therefore, they have the same root. They're from Yisod, the sphere of Yisod. If I could humbly add, maybe that's why Ben Ish Chai was passed away in the 6th month of the year. Yisod is the 6th sphera. And therefore, Rebbe and Ben Ish Chai both come from Yisod, and they share the similar features that if you were at their Levaya, Mezuman l'chai olam haba. Now, both Rebbe and the Ben Ish Chai, they both have the root of the soul of Yosef HaTzaddik. That was the big bombshell revelation of Reb Shimon Agassi. The students of the Ben Ish Chai therefore point out, now I would add an interesting thing. You know, many years ago when I was in yeshiva, I remember I was 19 years old, and they took us in the middle of the night to Rebbe's kever in Sipori. A few years ago I did a tour to Eretz Yisrael, and I took the group to Rebbe's kever in Beit She'arim. And then I said, wait a second. I was at a different kever of Rebbe's about 20 years earlier. And it turned out Rebbe has two burial spots, just like the Ben Ish Chai. Isn't that interesting? Rebbe, the Gemara says, passed away. The Rebbe lived in Beit She'arim. But at the end of his life, he wasn't feeling well, so they brought him up to a higher altitude. They brought him up to Tzipori. And he died in Tzipori, but supposedly they brought him to Beit She'arim. And you could look in all the Sfarim on Kevarim, Rebbe has two spots, Beit She'arim and Tzipori, similar to Ben Ish Chai. Says Reb Shimon Agassi, the reason why... Now, the Ben Ish Chai, at the end of his life, he wasn't feeling well. He went up to Chala. He went to pray by the grave of Yechezkel Hanavi. And he passed away there. And then they carried him back down to Baghdad. Just like Yosef HaTzaddik, who passed away in Mitzrayim, and they carried him to Shechem. So we see a lot of similarities. By the way, the Ben Ish Chai, when he was a young boy, he was playing with his sister, and his sister shoved him babar into a water cistern. And he was drowning, and he was kamad in the Olam HaEmes, and they revivified him, they resuscitated him, and also they said, we see from here that Ben Ish Chai, like Yosef HaTzaddik, was thrown into a bar, like Yosef HaTzaddik was incarcerated. There are many parallels and similarities between Ben Ish Chai and Chacham Yosef Chaim. But I'll tell you one more similarity. We know that the Yosef, one of the things he said about the brothers was that the brothers were eating Eiver min hachai. So says the Imre Emes, what did Yosef mean that the brothers were eating Eiver min hachai? Yosef was a chai. Why was he a chai? Because the Gemara says that tzaddikim are called ben ish chai. Yosef was a ben ish chai, the Imre Emes says. And the brothers were peiresh from him. So when Yosef said that they ate Eiver min hachai, that means they left him, the ben ish chai. Interesting. So not only was the ben ish chai from the root of Yosef, Yosef was also ben ish chai. Okay, so that's just the introductory thought. Yud Gimel Elul. the night of the Ben Ish Chai. Should we make this as like a separate shiur? We'll keep on going.
Sure.
Keep on going.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.